Welcome back, everyone. We're going to section 8 of the contract. Pete?
Hi, John. Thanks for having me again.
Yep.
So we're in section 8, title insurance, record title, and off-record title. So traditionally, I would say you're marking 8.1.1 that the seller's going to pay for title. I never really particularly asked for an abstract. Do you?
No.
Right. 8.1.2, the buyer selecting title insurance company. This might come up if you have investors. So an investor is likely going to want to have something called a hold open title policy, because he's going to resell that home within the next 6 months, 12 months, whatever that might be. And he's going to want to use his title company to accomplish that. This can also be used as a negotiation to make your buyer stronger than other buyers, which is important in this market, because you are saving that seller about $1,500, $1,600, $1,700 in many cases. If you are using this as a negotiation in your contract, or you're using that, make sure that the seller is aware of it in the email when you're emailing this, because a lot of brokers might miss this, especially newer brokers. So it's important, if you're going to actually mark 8.1.2, that you're telling the listing agent that you're doing so.
Absolutely.
Anything else you want to add on buyer versus seller picking?
No. Let's go to the next one.
Okay, 8.1.3, owner's extended coverage. This is always a will in my book, and I am always asking the seller to pay for this. Are you, John?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's just covering you from the title contract till the time of closing.
Can you explain a little bit about what this owner's extended coverage covers?
It covers things like unrecorded easements, mechanics liens. Like, let's say you get into a negotiation and a contract and you agree that the roofer is going to replace the roof. Seller replaces the roof but decides not to pay the roofer, sells you the home. All of a sudden, 6 months later, you got a very angry roofer in your front yard demanding money, that type of stuff. That's going to cover those types of things. The title company is going to be responsible for that, and yet will then pursue the buyer or the seller for those said monies. Okay. Anything else you want to add to extended coverage?
No, I think that's good explanation there. Okay, let's go to 8.1.4, title documents.
This is more just kind of the definition of what happens in section 3 for 8.1.4 as far as the documents that are required by the title company be given to a buyer, and the title commitment issued by a seller. These are due by such and such a date, which is again defined in section 3, and we went over that in our last video. That's the due date, or what those title documents are going to be.
Good. So next section goes over record title deadline, which you talked about.
Yeah, I kind of went into section 8.1.5 I guess, the record title deadline.
And then we said usually we don't have to worry about abstracts of title, and that's existing.
Can you think of a situation where you really needed the abstract, John?
Not in 23 years of my business. I don't think I ever had to.
I have never had to dig into the abstracts. So
right. I think it's
real estate.
Yeah,
maybe if you're selling out in the country somewhere, you need it, but
yeah, an older title or something like that. Okay, record title.
You want to jump on? Oh yeah, record title. Sorry.
Sure.
Record title. This is basically just everything that's recorded against the title of the property. Any liens, encumbrances that you find through county record, the title company will do a record search, and be aware of that in your title commitment. We'll go over the title commitments in a different video.
Okay. All right. So buyer has a chance to object if they don't like something on the record title.
Correct. And back in the day of short sales, when you looked at the title commitment and there was 8 liens on title and your purchase price was far less than all of those added up, that's when we had to have some objections to title. You're not seeing it as often today, but do be aware of your title commitment and what those encumbrances are.
So for our new associates, our recommendation is probably sit down with your title rep or title company and maybe learn some of the issues with the title so that you are fully aware what happens with the title records and stuff like that.
Absolutely, and I'm happy to have a video with the title rep as well to go over title.
Perfect. Okay. How about off-record title?
So this gets a little tricky, John. Off-record title, I run into this a lot in my mountain properties, mostly with easements and who owns the rights to the driveway kind of stuff. There may not be something that's recorded. It may be a handshake between the two families, and one individual passes away and the others don't feel the same way. So there's some really sticky issues that I've ran into there. That's also solved by a survey.
Right.
There's also survey deadlines a little bit further down the contract, so that's going to be really important. John, what other kind of off-record matters do you run into time to time? It's not something that happens very often.
No, I don't think so. I think you hit it right on the head. Surveys, ILCs. So we'll cover that later on. Okay. Oh, this is really important here. 8.4.
Yeah, sometimes when the commission wants to get your attention, John, they might put something in capital letters, right?
Right. That's why we have it.
But everybody hates to talk about Section 8.4. So,
yep.
Special taxing districts. This applies to almost all of the new built communities that you're seeing in and around town. The infrastructure, the new water reserves, all those types of things are being paid by these special taxing districts. They are in addition to the mill levies that are charged. So it's a separate tax. And that's why when you walk into a new built community, instead of having your $2,500 to $3,000 annual tax, you're looking at $5,000, $6,000 for your typical single family home right now. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, which a lot of the buyers are unaware of. So the very first question you should ask when you're at a sales community is, what is your expected taxes, property taxes? And like you said, if they're double than normal, that might not be a good option for our buyers to buy new homes in those communities.
I think it's our responsibility to really put that into perspective. When that buyer is sitting at that new build community, walking through an incredible model home with all the new bells and whistles, by the way, it's $100,000 more than the house that they're going to sell you. It's important to talk about the fact that they're paying $500, $600 a month to live in these communities. So when you put that into perspective versus them paying $200 or $300 a month to live in a community that's 10 years older, they may want to make that decision to move into those other communities. Important to talk about.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's go into, I think, 8.5, right to object to title and resolution. I think you could go over this really quick.
Yeah, basically very simple. You have the right to object to any title concerns that you have. You have a right to resolve those title issues or come up with a resolution. If you object and it is not resolved, the contract shall terminate, just like any other objection and resolution. You have also a right to withdraw your objection.
Okay.
Anything else there?
No. Okay. Right of first refusal. Let's touch on this real quick.
Basically giving the seller the ability to terminate a contract to a certain period of time. Anything else?
Yeah, so usually most of our associates won't see this apply to their houses. It's only when it's like in co-op situation or where the HOA has a right to match the price of the home being sold before.
That's a good point. I forgot that one.
So if it's in a condo complex and an HOA has a right to the property, if somebody offers $300,000, HOA may say, well, we will match that price and we'll keep it, So, but hardly ever you will ever see that in our market. So 8.7.
Title advisory. Man, John, you're getting into parts of the contract I haven't read in years.
It's a good thing for us too.
Yeah, right. um,
This is just a warning.
but yeah, just
Yeah,
a
it's just a
warning
warning.
to review everything.
Yeah.
In many cases, when you're getting into title, especially 8.7, 8.1, the next three paragraphs,
Mm-hmm.
if you are dealing with any subsurface rights, any oil and gas rights, again, this needs to be in capital letters for a reason. You need to get a title attorney involved. This is well beyond what a real estate agent should be interpreting any of these documents. All these are deeded separately from the warranty deed in many cases, or need to be severed from a warranty deed. And you need to be talking to a title attorney for any water rights, oil and gas rights, mineral rights, mining claims, etc.
Awesome. Good enough explanation there. Next line, title insurance exclusions.
Well, that's my favorite one. That's just how the title company gets out of their claims.
Exclude this, exclude that, exclude this.
Yes, exactly. So do read through those exclusions. They are there. Basically excludes a lot of what the title company's not covering.
Right.
So they'll insure the title transfer. They'll insure the liens against the title that are recorded, death certificates, those types of things. They're not going to be insuring your oil and gas and mineral rights, which is why those paragraphs are in capital letters, which should automatically trigger an attorney to get involved in the transaction and talk to your managing broker about it.
Yeah, consultant attorney. There we go. All right.
Oh, there it is.
Okay, let's go to ILC. We talked about it. So,
Oh, surveys are fun.
yep.
Typically, when you're in the inner city lots, you're not going to really need to see a survey. If you've got the lot and block legal description, like we talked about in our first videos. However, whenever you see a meets and bounds legal description, meaning start at meridian point A, go 75 degrees, at that point in time, it's important to talk to your clients about getting a survey. If you're purchasing more than, let's say, an acre and a lot and block, in many cases, you want to make sure that you're truly purchasing those 25 or 35 acres. If you're purchasing any horse properties, I've been in many cases where after the survey, we find out that they only own half of the horse pasture and they've severely damaged the neighbor's property. So there's a lot of things that come into surveys. Driveways are a big one. A lot of people don't own their driveways. It's owned by 3 or 4 different neighbors. And how is that to be maintained? Whose responsibility is it? Is there an easement? Is there an agreement between the 4 lots that adjoin to that driveway? So a lot of complicated things here. To fill this contract out, if you are in a survey situation, first come talk to me because I want you to understand what you're doing. There's a difference between an improvement location certificate and a new survey. Okay, improvement location certificate is called an ILC. A title company may need this if there's been improvements made to a property, like a new structure was added, a garage in the back, a new build. They might ask for an improvement location certificate. This is basically a sketch of the boundary survey. Nothing much more. They may indicate the boundary lines. They'll indicate the new structure. The surveyor does go out there to do a quick sketch, but it is not a full-blown survey. They don't bring out their GPS locating devices and so forth. That is a new survey. That's option number 2. So to get a title company satisfied, option number 1 will probably work fine. If you're buying land and you're doing other things, it's important to discuss your clients doing a survey, and I highly recommend it because this is part of buying larger lots. And most businesses, when they're subdividing, will need surveys. Your builder who wants to build a duplex downtown may need a survey. You want to get this out there in the contract. This is a $3,500 item, and it could be a $6,000 or $10,000 item, depending on the size of the properties that you're getting surveyed. So you need to discuss that with your buyers. Ordering of ILC or new survey, 9.1.1 is going to discuss who pays for it. So if it's a title issue, like an ILC, where he built on the back garage and the title company is saying, hey, we want an improvement location certificate to ensure the title of this property, it's appropriate to ask a seller to pay for it. because that seller's made that improvement and they need that for the title commitment to then close on the property. But let's say I'm buying 45 acres in Bailey, and I want to make sure I'm buying 45 acres in Bailey, then I'm going to need to probably go out and do a survey because I want to build a big barn out on my property. I'm going to need to pull permitting for that, and I want to make sure that my horse pasture doesn't intrude on my neighbor's lot. And I also want to make sure that I have access to my 2 driveways that come into my property. I'm going to need to do a full-blown survey. If that's the situation, it's appropriate for the buyer to then pay for it because it's not for the seller's information, it's for now the buyer's information. So there may be different circumstances where a buyer or a seller may need to pay for those surveys. Anything with land, anything with improvements, it's important to do one or the other. And the big thing to remember is if it's improvements, improvement location certificate, that's only like a $500 to a $1,200 item. If it's land, driveways, things like that, boundary survey, that's about a $3,000 to $10,000 item. Anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, how about this? I just wrote this here. If required by the title company, then seller will order it and pay for it. If required by lender or buyer, then the buyer will order it and pay for it.
Yeah, I've been seeing that a lot, and I think that's a fair statement to put into the payment.
Okay, perfect. So we'll leave that in there. Anything else you want to cover here? I think this is
just like
standard.
anything else, you have a right to object and a right to resolve. If you object and don't resolve, contract terminates. So be aware of that.
Okay, let's jump to seller's property disclosure.
SPD, all right. So this is that document that you on the listing side should be giving to your clients and asking them to disclose any material defects to the property. So the first thing I always tell my clients is this is a great disclosure to know what they're going to tell us, okay? And they do have to disclose adverse material defects. Doesn't mean that every single seller out there is going to do that, so it's very important that we do our own inspections, which is where we're going right after this. But this is the document that ends up in a courtroom quite often. Because if a seller is not disclosing the foundation problems and your buyer buys it and they haven't disclosed it, this is the document that you would be pursuing that individual with. So it is an important document on the listing side that you explain that to your clients. And you explain to your clients that it's an adverse material defect, you're going to disclose it or you're not going to represent them at all. Because I promise you that's not worth it in your real estate career.
Right.
And on the buying side, it's the document that you pursue people with ultimately in the end.
So what's the advice for the sellers? Disclose
everything. It's not worth it. You know what? We can sell any kind of home. I've sold meth homes, all different kinds of things. In fact, we're going to talk about meth here in about 10 sections or so. Anyway, moving forward through that inspection, very, very, very important piece of buying real estate. Do never, ever, ever let a first-time home buyer say they don't need an inspection. If they insist they don't need an inspection, you better send them like 4 emails telling them not to do that, and having them respond to those emails. This is a unique paragraph in the fact that a seller does have to let you in during your inspection period of time. We've ran into some interesting things there with COVID where you may only be able to get access, I believe it's 2 times now, John? Was kind of the new thing that they came up with. But this paragraph still says that you can enter as many times as you need to for any reason and have any kind of inspection done to this property. Very important to do a general inspection. Sewer scope is absolutely important. And we'll talk about some of our environmental inspections here shortly. Okay.
So they have the right to inspect, they have right to object, they have right to terminate, they have right to come up resolve it. So this is pretty self-explanatory. So let's go.
10.4 is an interesting one, John, and I just want to share one experience that I had one time in 10.4. And I like to spend a little bit of time in section 10 because it is an important section of our contract. But I had an inspection one morning, and I typically send my inspector about an hour before I get there. I ask permission from the seller if I can give my inspector the lockbox. Never just give it to them. Ask the seller's permission.
Right.
99.9% of the time, it's fine.
Mm-hmm.
And the 1% it's not, it's a good thing that you found out it wasn't, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Because they weren't ready to, let the pit bull out or something else like that. So inspector shows up and starts inspecting the outside of the home. Climbs up to the 33rd story of a home on a tiled roof.
Oh, okay.
Inspector loses his balance, falls 30 feet into the driveway.
Terrible.
And hits the roof in 2 separate sections on his way down.
Oh.
I get a call from the listing agent asking me how my inspection's going. And I say, well, it should be going fine. I'm there in about 30 minutes. And he tells me that my inspector's laying a pool of blood in the middle of the driveway.
Oh.
And 911's been called and the ambulance is on their way. The thing that did happen, and the moral of the story is inspector ended up okay. Took him to the ER. So he did survive and had some pretty serious surgeries, but he made it. But on his way down, he hit 2 sections of the roof on a tiled roof and destroyed the tiles on the way down. And those tiles are discontinued. And we're talking about a $60,000 roof, John,
Woo! Man.
Because of those tiles.
Oh my gosh.
Guess who's responsible, John, in this paragraph, 10.4?
Gosh, I'm gonna have to say sellers harmless here.
Sellers hold harmless.
Yeah.
I'm not responsible because I'm not party to the contract, John.
Oh my goodness.
Inspector's not liable because inspector's not party to the contract. Now there is some other things where they could probably pursue damages to both realtor and inspector. Don't get that wrong.
Right.
However, this actually makes the buyer liable for all of those damages.
This kind of sucks for our buyers.
Yes. So when you have your first time home buyer and you've just started their home inspection and told them that they're now liable for a $60,000 roof, it could be a little bit of a hiccup in your real estate transaction. The good news is that the home inspector did have a liability insurance policy. However, he also had a $5,000 deductible on his insurance policy.
Oh.
And my poor home inspector who was getting out of the ER wasn't in the position to write a $5,000 check. So guess who was? Either my buyer or his realtor. And to make things easier, his realtor wrote a check for $5,000 and covered that claim.
Right.
But do be careful of who you're sending out to your home inspections. Make sure that they have insurance. You don't know who's climbing up on what roof, on what $1 million home. And it's really easy to get in trouble. And that's just a really good example of section 10.4 that I've experienced personally and thought I would let others know.
So now just get a drone, have the inspector to get a drone.
Most inspectors have drones nowadays. This was a handful of years ago, John, but very interesting experience.
Oh, it's only $5,000. No problem.
It was an easy lesson.
Okay, insurability.
The only thing I can say that you really need to be aware of is floodplains here. That's or if you're buying in the mountains, the fire district that you're in, because those policies can get into the $8,000 to $10,000 range versus your typical $1,500 or $2,500 policies.
Okay, due diligence documents.
So here, John, I'm looking for any type of warranties maybe that are associated with the home. New builders might have mechanical warranties, structural warranties, those types of things. I'm also looking for any type of leases that are associated with this property.
Right.
So any tenant leases, any solar leases that might be associated with this property. In some cases, if you have water rights, you may be leasing water to your neighbor. Those are some other things that you might get into when you're dealing with land deals. So that's what I'm typically looking for in due diligence documents. Anything else you want to add there?
No, I think we kind of typed that up, so I think we're good.
Okay.
All right, and review objection resolution. We know that now. Let's go to 10.7. You have a house to sell. Yep,
this is where it goes. You need to put in the address do not lie in this situation. You will be in a bad spot if you're down the road. I know it's been a difficult market, but you could still get conditional sales done. You just need to negotiate a little bit harder. But yes, do put in the address if they need to sell.
Okay, so actually one of my associates called me last night on this topic. So he is selling a $340,000 home, and then he's writing an offer on $800,000 home. So he's asking me, when should that condition expire? Should we make it 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks? So I said, everything is negotiable. So, if that $800,000 home is, doesn't have any offers at the time, so talk to the listing broker and see what works best for both parties. But if you're protecting the buyer, you want that as long as possible. But if you're representing the seller, you want that contingency as short as possible. You want to cover that a little bit?
Yeah, and be careful on how you set that objection too. Like if you want to maybe take a little more risk as the buying side to compete, and you're past inspection, and you've got your appraisal in hand, well then maybe you can kind of tighten that deadline up a little bit if you want to take some risk there. But I would encourage you to have that deadline on or after your scheduled closing in most cases.
Wow. So even after scheduled closing?
Sometimes, because in this world it doesn't always work out that way.
Right.
And if the seller in your example at the 800,000, if the seller has no other offers,
they'll work with you.
Negotiate.
Yeah,
if you're
they'll
up
work
against
with
10
you.
contracts,
Yeah.
Get yourself 10 days past a couple of your major objections.
Right. Okay, let's jump to the source of potable water.
So this is some agents, including myself, will actually upload the seller's property disclosure into supplementals. That's the only time you'll usually see that. Most of the time it does not. And if you're selling in the city, there is no well. If you are in the suburb or out in the rural country, you're going to want to pull a well permit. Yes. And they may or may not doesn't give you one.
Okay, perfect. I think Donna Hessler and I will be doing a class on well permit, water wells, and things like that in the near future.
Great.
All right, let's see. Lead-based paint. I don't like lead-based paint.
No, don't eat the paint chips, John.
They're sweet though.
Yeah, I know it's hard to resist. So if you have a real estate license, you should be well aware of January 1st, 1978. I think it's on the test like 50 times. So that's a gimme. All you have to do is memorize 1 year. This basically is very specific to the fact that anything built before 1978 must accompany a lead-based paint disclosure. You should also give them a pamphlet that discloses the hazards of lead-based paint, and that needs to be signed by both buyers, sellers, and agents. Okay, and it's so important that they actually will say that the contract terminates if it's not done by the lead-based paint disclosure deadline. So this is a part of the contract that, notwithstanding any other provision, will actually terminate your contract if it's not executed by all parties. Wholesalers like to use this to tie up properties and get themselves out of contracts to get their earnest money back over a longer period of time. That's the only time I've ever seen this document really get misused. So do be aware of that and make sure that you are getting your lead-based paint termination deadline in, and you're very focused on that deadline, because the commission is not going to be happy with you if they audit your file and you haven't given your client a pamphlet or a disclosure.
So you could get in serious trouble right here. So be careful there. Okay. All right.
And same with the next two paragraphs, John, really. Yeah. Carbon monoxide alarms, I mean, seems like a pretty simple thing. It's $35 and 2 screws and a power drill. Yeah. But a lot of people like to leave those out. You should always be objecting to these if you're seeing them missing in your inspections. It is a Colorado state law that they are 15 feet from every bedroom door.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So that's a big thing, pretty simple, self-explanatory.
Mm-hmm.
Next paragraph, not as simple, not as self-explanatory, and that's the methamphetamines.
Yay!
So, yes, don't do meth, people. It's bad in many,
Hey,
many ways,
hey, Pete.
including destroying your real estate and the value of your real estate. Um,
Hey, Pete. I know you're an expert in meth. Have you ever done it?
no, no. I've mitigated it plenty of times though. So about 6, 7 years ago, I had a lot of lower income rental properties, and we started running into meth and the damages it does to real estate. After my experiences in that part of town, I started talking to my buyers about it, mainly my FHA borrowers or my people that are in, just getting that 3 or 5% put down on a home. And it is important that you are talking to them about doing meth testing. Okay. That runs about $575. Brokers in my firm can offer to subsidize that because it is that important. Okay. For your consumer that has very little amount of money to put down to deal with a meth issue. I can't smell it, I can't see it, and we're looking for the smokers basically. And my typical remediation for a home is in the neighborhood of $8,000 to $40,000, and that's just to tear the stuff out. That's not to put new kitchens back into place. That's not to put new carpet down. That's not to put new tile in. So there's a lot of damage that comes with meth homes, and it's important for your consumer to make sure that they're not purchasing one. Almost every year I see an article out on the news where an FHA family moves into a home that they didn't know was contaminated. They have a little kid starts getting sick, and then they discover that there's positive meth reads in their homes.
Hey,
So that's a
this.
topic in itself, and I think we'll probably end up shooting a video on that one.
All right, give me the testing people's phone number if you have it on you.
Okay, so I use one company called WeCycle Environmental. There's Judy Stardowski. Sorry, that's a tough name to pronounce. It's her company. She's the licensed hygienist. Her phone number is 303-413-0452. Again, 303-413-0452. They're a great resource. There's a number of other companies out there as well. The important thing here is do make sure your clients are aware of it. In fact, I started subsidizing it, and I kid you not, I get about 5 positives, 6 positives a year, in typically out of like 50 to 55 transactions. So
Thank you so much. That's a great info. And I may have to start doing this myself. So thank you for covering that.
sure.
All right. So 303-413-0452.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So
moving on down, tenant estoppels. Or
okay.
section 11. We're done with section 10.
Okay. I am erasing this. Let me get an eraser. Sorry. It's taking me longer. There we go. Boom, boom, boom. Okay. Okay, this usually, oh, they don't apply. So let's go to the next one.
That's a different contract now. So
yeah, that's usually for commercial properties here.
Yeah, income properties. We can cover the differences in the contract. It's a different video.
Yeah, but for our associates, we don't have to worry about that right now. Okay, let's do number 12.
So closing documents, closing disclosures. So in most cases, I'm not including them unless there's any specific title instruction I'm trying to put into a transaction. And on the closing date, listing agent and selling broker, I put typically listing agent for seller and selling agent for buyer, but that's a shorter sentence, so I like John's version.
Okay. All right, so let's go to 13.
So there's a couple of deeds here. The big difference here is either general warranty deed or special warranty deed. Those are the two that you're going to see a majority of the time. If there's someone that passes away, you might see a personal representative's deed. That means a personal representative's been appointed to handle that transaction. General warranty deed is a deed back to the beginning of time. Special warranty deed is if there's an event that was forced by a trustee or someone like that to sever the title. That's usually where I see the special warranty deed in foreclosures and things like that. Quick claim deed, you shouldn't be doing that without an attorney. So you have an attorney involved. Same with the bargain and sale deed. That's actually how you convey all your water rights, mineral rights, and so forth. Anything else that you want to add to the deeds?
Well, so recently I've been seeing this much more.
The warranty deed?
Special warranty deed versus general. The sellers just want to go with the special warranty deed most of the time now. But talk to your managing broker, see what's the better choice for you and your clients, and go from there. All right, closing costs.
Section 15, the one where no one ever clicks through all the buttons, John.
Yep.
John and I have plenty of listings, so we see this section misused quite a bit. Closing service fee, I love it when my clients say, oh, they're going to pay for my closing costs if you just hit seller in that part. So no, this is not your closing costs. This is the cost of the title company performing the closing. That's called a service fee. And that's typically half and half. And the way I explain that to my clients is you're both going to the closing, right? Okay, right. So you should effectively split it.
Right. This could be anywhere from $300 to $450.
Yeah, it's not typically very expensive.
Okay.
Status letter and recording fees. Okay. So it's just like it sounds. You should actually read the sentence, and it'd be a lot easier to explain it. But it's the association status letter is the final bill that the association gives that seller. It's a summary of that final bill. This is typically $250 all the way up to $750 to $1,000. That's typically a seller expense. And then any record change fee is basically like recording the new buyer to the HOA. This a lot of times is a buyer expense. Although I like to mark seller either way. But that's basically any record or transfer fees.
Right. So if you're representing the buyer, this will cost your buyer nothing.
Right.
But I think this is fair, seller and buyer. That's just my thought.
That is the fair way to do it. Exactly. Yeah. Local transfer tax. So this isn't going to apply in Denver, but it will apply in any mountain communities. So be aware of any transfer taxes. They could be anywhere from 1 to 4%, I think, in Aspen now. Something along those lines. So when you do go outside of the range of where you typically sell real estate, make sure that you are familiar with that, because you'd hate to give up your entire commission to the city, right?
Yeah, that would be terrible.
Typically, this should be marked as none.
Boom.
Private transfer fees. So this could be any additional HOA or developer fees, any type of foundation that you might have to buy into or anything like that. I've never really seen a whole lot of private transfer fees. Have you, John?
No.
That's almost none every time. And the seller will likely disclose any of those transfer fees to you. So you could put that. I knew a broker once that would put seller, and in the blocks they would put if any.
Oh, I like that. Let's do that.
So that was another thing that I've done in the past, and just put if any. And then that makes it a seller obligation. And if they want to disclose that there's something there, that'll bring them out and say, hey, by the way, this is a $50,000 transfer fee. I don't want to pay it all.
Yeah.
Water transfer fees. I just have a habit of putting $250. Okay. And then water district and small domestic water company is the two boxes I check. And then I put seller. Okay.
Down here, please seller. Okay. Right. I like that. Okay.
I mean, that's just to say, so believe it or not, Denver Water and all those districts do usually have like a $50 fee to transfer water.
Okay.
And that's just withheld from the seller's escrow. So I mark it that way. A title company is like the only one that gets there. If there's any water stock certificates or augmentation membership, Now you're dealing with wells. So again, this is going to come back to a well. So you're not going to really see water stocks or certificates or augmentation rights or anything like that, unless you have a well, and then you need to get an attorney involved.
Yes.
Sales and use tax. John, any good explanation of that one, or any situations where you ran into it? I can't say I have.
None.
None almost every time.
Yeah. Except if you're in a business transfer, business opportunity, something like that, you'll see use tax. But they don't have to worry about that now.
Okay.
All right. Let's go to FERTA.
FERTA, yes. So this is, you need to know if on the selling side, listing side, it's important that you find out if your seller is a foreign person or if they have a U.S. income tax number, okay, an EIN or Social Security. This has been a hot topic because they do want you to withhold 15% of the sale price, correct, John? I think that's the price now. And it does put the buyer responsible in the event that this is not handled properly.
Yep.
We're now seeing title companies have a disclosure in their commitments for it. A majority of the title companies are now signing off on that.
Yep.
And a listing agent is likely to tell you, if someone is a foreign entity, and don't be afraid to ask a listing agent.
Yes.
Hey, is this a foreign person?
All right. Yep.
I've run into this. I do sell homes for foreign people. So there is a 15% withholdings. John, have you seen this?
Yeah. So the government, IRS, what they are saying is if foreign entities, especially foreign companies, come here and buy residential properties and they're selling them, but they also have other commercial properties or other businesses, and if they left the country without paying those taxes, they want somebody to be liable, and they're making that liability on the buyer. So it's the buyer's responsibility, which doesn't seem fair, but that's how it is structured. So when you're representing the buyer, you have to make sure that this doesn't apply to you guys.
And this is a big topic in real estate. We've been going back and forth with this every year, it seems like. State of Colorado has a similar thing. If your client is no longer going to maintain residency within the state of Colorado is going to withhold 2% of the sale. And they can get that back obviously after filing. But that is another disclosure that your seller will be signing at the closing table.
Right. So if they're selling their house, staying in Colorado, this does not apply. But if they're selling their house in Colorado and moving to California or something like that, they may withhold 2%. And after they file their taxes, I think it comes along with like next year's taxes. So when you file that taxes and get your return, I guess that's when you're supposed to get your withholdings back.
Correct.
All right, taxes.
Expirations. So I typically use the most recent mill levy.
Agree.
That's going to benefit your buyer because taxes go up every year. So vice versa, back in 2007, if anyone remembers that anymore, when the market was actually going in the opposite direction, you might want to use the immediate preceding tax year because the taxes were higher and going down. Right. Exact opposite right now. So using the most recent mill levy valuation is going to give you a higher proration there.
Yeah, this might be a little hard topic for new agents to understand, but yeah, for right now, let's choose this one.
Most recent, yes.
Okay, rents.
Thanks for simplifying it for me, John. Rents. This is going to fall to your investors, and I always mark the box accrued.
Me too.
And if the listing agent is countering you to rents actually received, it's a pretty good indicator that the tenants don't pay on time or they don't have all of the rents.
Yes.
So I always mark accrued, and then if you're getting countered back, it's a good tell on what's really going on with the tenants in the property.
Okay. Let's go to this one. Buyer, seller, association assessment.
Seller every time.
Yep.
You have to disclose any type of special assessments, what the dues are, and so forth.
What do you put down here? on this box?
If I'm aware of any special assessments, I put it in there. And that's the only thing I really do. And a lot of agents that are good will be disclosing any type of special assessments coming up. It will come up in the seller status letter as well.
Okay. All right. How about here? Other prorations.
You know, I don't ever really run into a whole lot of other prorations, but if you get into prorating how much propane is left in the tanks or how much gas is left in storage in a commercial property, but there's other contracts that I think address that are more appropriate for that.
So should we leave it blank for our agents? Leave it blank. Okay. How about here? How much penalty?
I put $500 a day.
Oh, you're a mean guy.
I want them out of my house.
You're a mean guy. You're definitely.
I'm not a mean guy. I'm just a very direct person, John. A schedule is a schedule.
Okay.
You know,
I do.
I'll tell you, this has come up more than once for me, John.
Yeah.
And when that number used to be $200. You started typing.
Yeah.
And I found that a lot of people won't move out of their 3,500 square foot home over $200.
Right. So I actually, it depends on the value of the home. If it's more expensive, I tend to move that up. If it's less expensive, I tend to move it down. But I like your 500. That's a good number.
I just want it to be a good enough number that they can still afford to pay for it.
Yeah.
But bad enough that they really, really, really don't want to buy it the second or third day.
Yeah, I like it. This is missed a lot.
Yeah.
By the buyer brokers.
Exactly. You do not represent that you're going to be occupying the property. This is, I mean, it's a very simple sentence. Are you going to occupy or are you not going to occupy? Your lender is going to look at that paragraph. So make sure that you're representing that appropriately. And the income one doesn't even allow for that. So a lot of your investors should be using the income contract. So we'll go over that in a different video.
Okay. How about this one here? Post-occupancy.
So post-occupancy, probably our worst one-page contract of the entire commission-approved contracts. I'll tell you why later. But if you're going to do post-occupancy, then that box should be checked, even if it is 2 or 3 days.
Yeah, that's why I don't like sellers staying after closing. I would rather have them leave right at closing.
I would, any day of the week, extend the closing 2 weeks and to close early and let a seller stay there for 2 weeks after the fact.
Yeah.
There's a lot of litigation that happens after that, a lot of disputes. And the post-closing occupancy agreement is a one-page lease agreement that doesn't cover a lot of things. Any difference to that is my lease agreement's about 18 pages long.
Yes.
And that's because there's 18 pages worth of lawsuits in there. It does not cover it in a 12-section one-page contract. Yeah,
so per commission rules, if it's under 60 days, I guess realtors have a choice to use this form, use this agreement. A choice, I should say.
Correct. And anything above 60 days needs to be accompanied by a lease agreement, which needs to be drafted by an attorney, not by you. Do not Google it. Talk to me first. Perfect. Okay. Pete likes this one. John likes this one. We'll go with Pete. We'll go with Pete. The more time I spend in Tahiti, John, I'm going to probably start clicking on Will. So I met a fellow Metro Broker owner yesterday. He owns office out in Whitbridge. And he told me he's off to Hawaii both months of January and February, which I thought was really cool. So when I'm 71 years old, like he is, I want to do the same. 2 months in Hawaii. The one thing I want you to be aware of, either John's way or my way is okay. But if you're trying to negotiate a deal on a Sunday because whatever reason you're doing that, you have to mark will not, because if you mark will, it automatically pushes your deal to Monday. So that's why I changed. I'm going to go your way now. Will not extend. Okay, let's see. Anything else we should cover? Here, this is really important.
I mean, of course, I mean, always.
Cause of loss is a good one, John.
Okay.
And I actually have an experience of that one back
Okay.
in the short sale days.
All right. Let's talk about
So
that.
we are, I'm actually representing the seller,
Mm-hmm.
and we're 2 days from closing, and she's rigorously moving out of her home. And
Mm.
she puts a cardboard box full of her stuff on top of the stove,
Mm.
and her 5-year-old kid runs by and turns the stove on
Oh,
and
shoot.
burns her kitchen down.
Oh, no.
So there's a cause of loss here. And basically, the way that the cause of loss indemnity reads,
Mm-hmm.
that if a seller causes more than 10% of the causes more damage than 10% of the total purchase price of the home,
Right.
the buyer has a right to back out of that contract
Right.
and not purchase the home,
Right.
and does not have to give the seller any right or indemnity to cure.
Right.
Okay? If
Yep.
it's less than 10% of the value of the home,
Mm-hmm.
doesn't mean that the seller doesn't have to do anything, but the buyer does have to give the seller within reason to basically remediate the damages, and the buyer still is liable to this contract.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So that did happen to me in my example. The damages far exceeded 10% of the value of the home.
Mm-hmm.
The seller felt terrible, and the buyer was still interested in the property.
Mm-hmm.
The seller did file an insurance claim,
Mm-hmm.
and the buyer got a very, very nice new kitchen out of it.
That's awesome. So,
So it did work out in the end, but that is
yeah.
something I wanted to just briefly touch on.
Yeah. So when I bought my home here, same thing happened to me. So I was under contract for 775,000, and then the whole house flooded from the second bed, upstairs bathroom, toilet. It flooded the entire house. So it was definitely more than 10% while we were under contract. But I decided to stay in the contract because seller's insurance was going to cover $150,000 of repair, which totally remodeled the house. So for me, I decided to stay on because that was beneficial for me. But everybody's different, but it's good thing to be aware, I guess, of this clause here, 10%. All right, let's go. Do you want to cover anything about damages, inclusion, services, or anything like that?
I can't think of anything really that's ever come up in any of those paragraphs, John.
Yeah.
Condemnation. I have dealt with this with some. I've worked with the Denver Police Department with some properties that have been condemned either due to drug use, methamphetamines use, marijuana grow labs, those types of things. Be aware that some of that condemnation may encumber your title after the closing. So if there's a public nuisance abatement order, and if you've cleared that with the state attorney's office, they'll actually encumber the fact that you have to do a criminal background check on the next set of buyers to make sure that you're not reselling it to the same criminal organizations that were there in the first place. So they will actually literally cloud title. Those are some things you can call me and talk to me about if it ever comes up.
Okay.
19.4, very important paragraph, right, John?
Right.
Final walkthrough. Do not take this lightly.
Yes.
Do go back to the property before you buy the home.
Yes.
Make sure that house doesn't have the upstairs toilet on. Because guess what?
Sure.
Once that upstairs toilet is running and you buy that home and you file that claim, the insurance company can claim that you didn't cause the damage.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
the seller did. A good example of it is I had a client go back and the air conditioner was stolen.
Oh, no.
However, that was a $3,500 problem that we had to resolve prior to closing. So do go back and do your walkthrough. Make sure nothing's happened to that home before you purchase it. Because once you do walk out of that closing table, you can't take that back.
Yeah, it could have a window pane broken while, who
could have been burglarized.
Right.
It could have been, there's a number of things that could have happened to that home.
Or you could find a dead body in the house or. Okay, never mind. Home warranty.
Home warranty, I mean, that should be in your due diligence documents if you have any, and or if you negotiate one into the transaction. There'll be declarations on how that warranty should be handled. Again, should have been addressed in due diligence. I didn't even
Personally,
realize they had a whole warranty paragraph,
yeah,
Sean.
yeah. I actually been buying home warranty for my buyers if we don't negotiate one during inspection. If you're giving gifts to buyers or whatever, it's only up to $25. But for me, if I'm doing something nice for the buyers, I like to buy home warranties because I think it's really worth it.
Number 20 is a paragraph I like to touch on, and even in any of my presentations, but recommendation of legal and tax counsel. Remember, we did not pass the bar exam or the CPA exam. At least I didn't. John, have you?
No, I did.
Yep.
I did take my LSAT to go to law school, but I never did. So there you go.
Yeah, I thought about it for a little while, and I just
Yeah.
like real estate too much. You're not an attorney. Don't try to be one. Don't try to interpret water rights, mineral rights. Don't try to tell people what their tax liability is going to be if they buy or sell a home. Recommend legal or tax advice. To team up with a CPA, team up with the lawyer. It's going to be good for both of you for business, by the way. Especially if you create good relationships with those types of legal counsel and CPAs. Don't give that advice, even if you know the answer. Because his tax return might be a little bit different than yours. And if you misinterpret that, you're giving him bad advice.
Okay. Time of essence, defaults, and remedies.
Well, what was that Denver Bronco that missed his contract deadline by 6 minutes, was it, John?
Oh my God. I did not know about that one.
An entire $20-something million contract ended up playing for a different team.
Oh my goodness.
Time means the time, okay? 8/7/2020 means 8/7/2020 at midnight, okay? That's what it means. Don't do it 5 minutes later. Don't do it the next day. The real estate commission did realize that we were really bad at that. Not people that work for my firm, but others. So they actually created a contract revitalization form. However, time is of the essence. If you're not doing that, you might be screwing up your client's earnest money.
Okay, how about never here?
Yeah, never. Do you mark that box really?
Unless, there's always unless, right? Unless you are sure that your buyer could perform and there are a lot of competing offers and they want to be liable for the entire purchase price to make your offer stronger.
Yeah, just so that all of our agents understand what specific performance to a seller means. This means that if your buyer goes under contract for $700 and some odd thousand, let's say 700,000, and doesn't buy that home, and that seller can't sell it, turns around and sells it for 625, they're going to hold your buyer liable for the difference of that contract, and or the entire $785,000 if they decide not to sell it. So it's a bad box to check. Never check it, please.
Okay. So it will default to liquidated damages, which means you're liable just for your earnest money if you do something bad and cancel the contract.
And or any damages you might have caused to the property as well.
That's correct. But seller does not have a choice, as you learned in school. So you should review that a little bit. Anything else you want to cover?
Mediation is a good one to cover if there's a dispute. Both buyers and sellers in this contract agree to mediation before you start suing each other. Typically, we can go straight to our board. Smedra, all of us Metro brokers are required to be part of a board, so go to your board. You can schedule mediation directly with them. It's about $250 to each party, and they typically come up with resolution through that mediation process. You're typically not arguing over enough money to have that go anywhere else.
So what would happen if that other realtor is not a realtor, but just a licensee without belonging to a realtor board?
Well, you can, John, I can't say I've really gone or had that issue. I know that that's between buyer and seller. Even if you go to small claims court, the court's going to ask if you've been in mediation prior to going into litigation, and if you haven't, they likely will throw your case out and have you start all over.
Yeah, so I've heard some realtors that they actually check their offers to see if they're dealing with a realtor or non-realtor. Because realtors, we have code of ethics. We stand by some of those, ethical stuff. So they prefer to work with a realtor, but I'll leave that up to the seller and buyer to decide. Okay.
And that covers earnest money disputes. That
Mhm.
would be covered in the mediation.
Right. Okay, termination.
So a buyer has a right to terminate within the termination deadlines of the contract, guys.
Yep.
And your seller does not. So make sure that your seller is signing a contract that they're ready to perform on, because that buyer can hold them to specific performance.
Okay, so I'm just gonna skip to internet.
I put CTME contracts in there.
Yeah.
You could put internet. If you're writing contracts in Boulder, they'll probably get mad at you if you don't put DocuSign.
Or internet will be easier.
Thank you for covering all three.
Okay, this contract is assignable.
Yeah, so if you were dealing with someone that wants to do assignability, you would put that in there. The only time I really deal with that is investors. Wholesalers do assignability as well. Your typical home buyers and sellers won't be assigning contracts, and honestly, a majority of your clients won't know what that means. If someone is doing assignability, talk to me about it as well, so that you understand what's happening with the title transfers.
Okay. All right. I think you want to put anything down here.
Yes, so I do. In 3.1.1, if you are doing a post-occupancy agreement, even though it's covered in 3.1.1.1, I still do put in that the post-occupancy agreement is a part of the contract.
Okay.
Another one that I do put in here is lead-based paint disclosure, if it's applicable to the contract. This is also where the 1031 exchange addendum should go. If you're participating in a 1031 exchange.
Okay. What else?
312. This is where I put source of water, seller's prop, and square footage. And some agents won't do a source of water addendum if it's filled out in the seller's property disclosure, and that's okay too.
Yes.
A lot of times they'll actually write that into broker comments if they're doing that.
Source of water addendum. What else did you say?
Square footage.
Oh, okay.
And seller's prop. Because it's not really a part of the contract, but it's a document that's been provided.
And seller's property. Anything else?
That's all I do there, John. Anything you add?
No, I think done. So let's save this offer. Oh, one
32.
thing. Yeah, we want to get paid, don't we?
We do want to get paid, right?
Okay. How's that? Usually.
So you could easily check that, but before you check that little button on listing broker firm, I suggest you do one of two things. Number one, you look it up in the MLS and do check what commission is offered. Okay.
Okay.
Number two, you should probably print and upload that MLS sheet that day, just to make sure nobody makes any changes later on. And in some cases, you may not be offered a full co-opt commission, John.
What? That stinks.
Right? So in my firm, we don't work for free. So,
yeah.
And in my firm, we've already marked the box that says the seller may pay, but the buyer is obligated to pay, which is the only time it's ever appropriate for you to negotiate anything that has to do with your commission, because it adversely affects the amount of money that a buyer may need to bring to closing.
Mm-hmm.
So where do you typically address these types of issues, John?
I never have issues, so
You can
just kidding.
negotiate it up front,
Yeah,
but if you need to put it into the contract,
yeah.
there's a thing that I've been doing, and it's just a suggestion. So I'll actually put brokerage firm let's take a for sale by owner, John.
Mm-hmm.
I go into my client finds a wonderful house on Zillow,
Mm-hmm.
not on the MLS. I call the Zillow listing, and the guy says, "I can't stand you brokers. I'm not paying you a penny."
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, we still need to get paid.
Mm-hmm.
And my buyer, maybe he can't really afford my commission.
Oh boy.
Geez, I know, what a tough spot.
Mm-hmm.
So I think a really simple way that I've been doing this, and it's actually been working pretty easily, and you can tell me what you think about it,
Mm-hmm.
is under this line, I'm actually going to hit the button buyer,
Got you.
and I'm going to scroll all the way up to section 4.
Section 4. Okay, let me go back there. Hold on. Shoo. Almost there. There we go. Uh-huh.
A little further.
Mm-hmm.
4.2.
Got you.
Or 4.3. Yeah,
Okay.
4.2, sorry.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to type my commission into section 4.2 as a concession.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And then I'm going to save that, and I'm going to go, and when I'm presenting the offer.
Well, so for our, yeah, I'm gonna change it back to 0, but for later purposes. Okay. But anyway, so
But
we
when I'm
got there.
negotiating the offer,
Uh-huh.
I'm going to explain to the seller that the buyer can't afford my commission.
Got you.
And I'm going to show them what the net of the purchase price and the concessions are going to be.
Mm-hmm.
And then my buyer is going to get that concession at closing and can afford to pay me, the buyer, the buying agent.
Got you. Okay.
So it's just a little bit easier to explain it that way.
Mm-hmm.
That's just one particular instance. 9 times out of 10, you're going to mark listing broker firm.
Yep. Boom. And then please look up and print.
Yes.
Awesome. I like it. You're amazing. All right, so we're gonna save it. So I saved this contract. So for any of Pete's brokers, any of my brokers, any of our YouTube channel subscriber realtors in Colorado, if you want a copy of this completed sample contract, just text me at 303-669-4664. And I'll be happy to just text me your email address, and I'll be happy to share that with you, or share this contract with you. So I know it's pretty lengthy, but thank you for staying with us. Pete done a great job for us, so thank you so much, Pete. And we'll cut the class here. So
Thanks,
thank
John.
you, guys.